What is the fundamental chasm that separates the mortal from the immortal, the human from the divine? It is not the fragile vessel of the body, which is bound to decay, nor is it the relentless march of time, which erodes all physical things. The true separation is a profound and tragic state of amnesia, a deep-seated forgetfulness. It is the forgetting that our essence is divine, that our souls are not fleeting sparks but eternal flames, as ancient as the cosmos itself. Throughout human history, countless spiritual traditions have emerged, each attempting in its own way to pierce this veil of forgetting and remind humanity of its celestial heritage. Yet, among these myriad paths, few are as comprehensive, as profoundly deep, and as potently revealing as the ancient science of Hermeticism. In the landscape of our contemporary existence, a world defined by its frenetic pace, its celebration of the superficial, and its constant sensory overload, the human spirit is perpetually distracted. The majority of people, when faced with the inevitable pains of existence, seek only immediate pacification, a quick remedy for discomforts that are not meant to be silenced, but to be understood. The true seeker on the Hermetic path, however, is not looking for simple relief. The Hermeticist does not desire pre-packaged answers, dogmatic formulas, or comforting platitudes. They are in pursuit of something far more significant, a master key. This is the key that unlocks the final, innermost door of reality, and its location is the greatest of secrets. It is not found within the pages of ancient books, nor is it bestowed by gurus or held within the doctrines of organized religion. It lies dormant in the deepest sanctuary of one's own being, concealed behind 7 symbolic veils of consciousness. The quest to find this key is not an external pilgrimage, but a courageous, continuous, and often challenging descent into the depths of oneself. Therefore, what you are about to experience is not a manual with rigid instructions. Consider it a map, a detailed cartography of the inner world, designed for those few who feel the call to live as authentic Hermeticists. It is a guide for navigating the inner landscape while being surrounded by the concrete jungles of modern cities, the digital glow of smartphones, and the ceaseless psychic noise generated by the slumbering masses. If this message has found you, and these words resonate within your soul, it is perhaps a sign that you are on the cusp of a great remembering. You are ready to awaken from the dream of separation and reclaim your divine birthright. To a mind that has been meticulously conditioned for a lifetime to exist within a cacophony of noise, there is something almost intolerable about genuine silence. Most individuals, when the clamor of the external world finally subsides, find themselves immediately rushing to fill the resulting void. They populate the space with an endless stream of thoughts, a cascade of memories, a torrent of anxieties about the future, and projections of what might be. We have, as a collective, become unable to bear the presence of silence, for in its stillness it acts as a perfect mirror, revealing our true selves to us. And the stark reality is that most people are not prepared to gaze upon their own reflection without the comfort of their carefully constructed masks. But this is the first great illusion to overcome. Silence is not an absence. It is not a void or an emptiness. It is, in fact, the ultimate presence. It is a vibrant, fertile ground from which everything authentic, true, and real can finally emerge. Within the esoteric framework of the Hermetic traditions, silence is elevated far beyond a mere virtue or a desirable state of being. It is regarded as a spiritual technology, a precise science of profound inner listening. If we travel back to the inner sanctums of ancient Egyptian temples, where these mysteries were preserved, we discover that the first portal of initiation for the neophyte was not one of words, but of their complete absence. Upon stepping onto the path of the mysteries, the aspirant was systematically deprived of all external stimuli, often confined to chambers of absolute darkness and profound silence. There, in what a modern individual might perceive as a form of torment or punishment, the channel of communication with the invisible, subtler worlds began to open. The ancient wisdom, as inscribed in the Book of the Dead, teaches that the silence of the heart is the very dwelling place of the gods. Hermes Trismegistus, the thrice great master of masters, understood and taught that silence is the divine womb of the Logos, the sacred matrix from which the creative word is born. Before anything true can be spoken, it must first be heard with absolute clarity, and it is only within the sanctum of deep silence that this act of listening can become utterly pure and undistorted. Modern science, for all its cautious hesitation before the threshold of the invisible, is slowly beginning to uncover empirical evidence that validates the profundity of this ancient practice. Groundbreaking research, such as that conducted by the Institute for Cognitive Sciences at the University of Helsinki, has revealed that a mere 2 minutes of absolute silence can activate regions of the brain responsible for emotional processing, memory, and sensory integration with a far greater intensity than even prolonged exposure to what we consider relaxing music. In essence, silence is not passive. It actively reorganizes the mind. Yet, the Hermeticist is never satisfied with this superficial, environmental silence. The true practitioner seeks to go deeper, to cultivate not only the silence of their surroundings, but the far more elusive silence of the mind. And deeper still, they quest for the silence of identity itself, that sublime state of stillness that arises when the I, the ego, finally ceases its relentless attempts to control, to judge, to interpret, and to understand. This is the silence of pure being, the moment in which the individual self willingly and joyfully surrenders to the great, intelligent flow of the all. The Corpus Hermeticum, a foundational collection of Hermetic texts, states with unambiguous clarity, "Renounce the word, if you wish to hear the divine word." This should not be mistaken for a poetic metaphor. It is a direct, technical instruction for spiritual perception. That which we call the voice of God, higher intuition, or gnosis, simply cannot be perceived while the vessel of the mind is already full of its own chatter. Therefore, to live authentically as a Hermeticist in the modern era demands the conscious and deliberate creation of sacred spaces of silence. These are not created as a means of escape from the world, but as a form of communion with it. This is not an act of passivity, but a powerful invocation of the real. Silence, then, transforms from a mere absence of sound into a dynamic, daily practice. It becomes an invisible laboratory wherein the consciousness is meticulously refined. It is within this sacred stillness that the inner alchemist begins the delicate process of distilling the dense, chaotic vapors of the ego, patiently, until only the pure essence remains clear, formless, and beyond all names. Meditation, when viewed and practiced through the illuminating light of Hermeticism, is not an exercise in forceful concentration, but a gentle offering of pure attention. The objective is not to wage war against the mind to silence it, but rather to learn to listen beyond its ceaseless activity. As Plotinus, a direct philosophical heir of the Hermetic lineage through the Neoplatonic tradition, so eloquently stated, the mind must become blind to see with the light of the soul. In the practical application of Hermetic ritual, silence is always the foundational first step. No divine force is invoked, no sacred sigil is drawn, no holy name is vibrated, until the inner and outer space has been consecrated through silence. This is because the word, the logos, only possesses true creative power when it is born from a pure, silent womb. The modern Hermeticist, even while deeply enmeshed in the demanding routines of urban life, must learn to cultivate this inner silence with the same devotion a priest tends to a sacred altar. They learn to wake before the world's noise begins, not for the sake of productivity, but for the sacred act of listening. They practice walking in silence, eating in silence, and contemplating in silence, not as a rigid habit, but as a sacred rite. They do this because they have come to understand that silence is the only mirror in which truth can be reflected without any distortion. And then, gradually, through consistent practice, silence ceases to be a fleeting moment in the day and blossoms into a constant state of being. The body still moves through the world, the voice speaks when necessary, and daily tasks are completed with efficiency. But deep within, an unshakable center of silence remains, a point of profound stillness at the very heart of the world's whirlwind. This is the essential first step on the path. Without it, all spiritual seeking is merely noise disguised as devotion. But with it, even the simplest, most mundane gesture, drinking a glass of water, gazing at the evening sky, washing the dishes, can be transfigured into a profoundly sacred act. Silence is not the opposite of the word. It is its cradle, and it is from within this sacred cradle that the Hermeticist truly begins to remember who they are. Long before the human body was reduced to the status of a biological machine, It was perceived by the wise as a living temple, and even before it was seen as a temple, it was understood to be a mirror. It is a mirror of the cosmos, a mirror of the soul, and a mirror of the divine laws that govern all of creation. The Hermeticist is one who walks this ancient, sacred path, a path where the body is neither a mere object of desire nor a sinful obstacle to be overcome. Instead, it is recognized as a living portal, an alchemical laboratory where the great work of spiritual transformation unfolds. The Hermetic tradition has never been one that shuns the physical form. Unlike many spiritual systems that view the body as inherently impure or unworthy of attention, the profound teachings of Hermes Trismegistus affirm that the body is the visible, tangible manifestation of the invisible, spiritual world. As it is famously written in the Emerald Tablet, that which is above is like that which is below, and that which is below is like that which is above, to accomplish the miracles of the One. The physical body is this sacred below. Within its very structure, the grand archetypes of the soul are reflected. The beating heart is our inner sun, the source of life and light. The liver corresponds to the warrior energy of Mars, the kidneys to the balancing principle of Libra. This is not to be confused with superficial pop astrology. It is a profound cosmological vision of the body as a microcosm, the direct incarnation of subtle cosmic forces into organized, living matter. But how can one possibly live this sacred vision in a world that predominantly treats the body as a tool for economic production, or at best, an object for aesthetic display? The answer, while profound, is remarkably simple: by reconsecrating it. The Hermeticist consecrates their body on a daily basis, not through elaborate external rituals, but through focused, internal attitudes. They learn to eat as if they were feeding a god residing within. They breathe as if they were invoking a divine spirit with every inhalation. They move through the world with conscious awareness, understanding that every gesture is a physical expression of will in the realm of matter. The science of alchemy teaches us that any process of transmutation requires a proper vessel, an athanor, which must be a pure and hermetically sealed container. It is within this vessel that the raw elements can be distilled, purified, and reintegrated into a higher state. This sacred vessel is the human body, and if this bodily vessel is constantly intoxicated, fragmented by stress, and distracted by trivialities, then no true alchemy is possible. Paracelsus, the great 16th century physician and alchemist, declared, "The body is the laboratory of the spirit, and the blood is its mercury." The blood is the carrier of our memories, our emotions, our traumas, and our highest visions. The breath is the alchemical fire that heats this internal cauldron. Food is the prima materia, the raw material for transmutation. Sleep is the stage of dissolution, where the old self is broken down to be reborn. In this view, nothing is banal. Everything becomes ritual. Modern science, while often blind to these deeper spiritual mysteries, is nevertheless beginning to glimpse fragments of this ancient wisdom. The field of epigenetics has now scientifically demonstrated that our emotions, our environment, and our mental states have a direct and measurable impact on our gene expression. The body is not a fixed, static object. It is a dynamic, moldable process, profoundly influenced not just by matter, but by consciousness. What the ancients referred to as vibration and vital fluid, we are now beginning to understand through the language of electromagnetic fields, cellular frequencies, and biophotonics. But the Hermeticist does not require external scientific validation to recognize the body as a sacred instrument. They feel it. They listen to its subtle wisdom. They honor its needs. That is why, to live as a Hermeticist in modern life, one must learn to slow the gesture. It is to be fully present while chewing, to be aware while bathing, to be conscious while walking. It is to transform physical stretching into a ritual for opening the subtle energetic channels of the body. It is to make the act of rest an offering to the spirit that dwells within the flesh. This path is not about developing an obsession with physical health or worshiping a particular aesthetic. It is about conditioning the body to be capable of containing the divine fire of the spirit. Because when the potent energy of higher consciousness truly begins to circulate, an unprepared, unpurified body will break under the strain. Many sincere aspirants on the path of magic and mysticism burn out, not because the practice itself is inherently dangerous, but because their physical vessel has not been sufficiently purified to safely conduct the high-voltage current of the spirit. This is why the practice of conscious breathing is of paramount importance in the Hermetic arts. Breathing is the most direct and immediate way to align the body, the mind, and the spirit. It is the very breath of the all, the macrocosm, moving within us, the microcosm. And by breathing with focused attention, long, deep, silent breaths, we begin to open the subtle channels that have been atrophied by neglect. The prana of the yogis, the pneuma of the Greeks, the ruach of the Hebrews, all of these terms point to the same fundamental mystery. There is something within the air that is more than just air. There is spirit. In the ancient Hermetic rituals, conscious breathing always preceded any invocation. This was no mere coincidence. The breath establishes the energetic field. It is the first and most critical step toward any form of transmutation. The body, then, is the hidden laboratory where the eternal elements are in a constant dance of interplay. Earth, solidified in our bones, provides structure. Water, flowing in our blood, carries memory. Fire, manifested in our vital impulse and the force of desire, ignites movement. Air, entering and leaving through our breath, serves as the bridge between the visible and the invisible worlds. And ether, the fifth element, silent and omnipresent in our consciousness, sustains the secret unity between all things. By truly understanding the body as a temple, we come to understand that everything we put into it is an offering. Everything we feel within it is a teaching. Everything we do with it is a ritual. There can be no true spirituality that is separate from the flesh. There is no genuine transcendence without conscious incarnation. Hermes Trismegistus reminds us, all is one, and the one reveals itself in all. And the very first place this one reveals itself to us is in this body, this temporary home, this portable temple, this humble clay vessel that, when properly purified, can hold the divine wine of the gods. And it is in this consecrated state that the modern Hermeticist walks among the sleeping world. If the body is indeed the temple, then the mind must be understood as the altar upon which the flame of the spirit is either kindled and sustained or neglected and extinguished. And just like any physical altar, it can be a sacred place of consecration or a defiled place of desecration. The outcome depends entirely on what is placed upon it. In the profound teachings of Hermeticism, the mind is not considered to be the enemy of the spirit, but crucially, neither is it its natural ally. It is, in its raw state, a neutral and therefore potentially dangerous force. The Kybalion, a modern summation of Hermetic principles, opens with the great law of mentalism. The all is mind. The universe is mental. To truly grasp this principle is not a mere intellectual exercise. It is a summons to a state of supreme responsibility. If the entire universe is mental in its nature, then it follows that everything we perceive and experience in our lives is a direct reflection of the internal structure and state of our own mind. On this level of understanding, reality itself functions as a mirror. But a mirror can only provide a clear and accurate reflection if its surface is clean. And the mind of the average modern human is anything but clean. It is cloudy, perpetually fogged by the incessant noise of the external world, conditioned by inherited belief systems, burdened by undigested memories, and driven by unexamined desires. We believe that we are thinking, but most of the time, we are simply reacting, caught in unconscious, conditioned loops. The modern mind can be likened to a house where unruly guests have taken up residence without an invitation, and the true owner has forgotten that they are, in fact, the owner. To live as a Hermeticist, therefore, is first and foremost to reclaim absolute sovereignty over this sacred inner space. It is to learn to look at one's own mind with the focused, dispassionate attention of an initiatic gardener, one who does not harshly judge the weeds that appear, but also never allows them to grow unchecked and choke out the desired plants. The Hermeticist observes, and in the very act of pure, non-judgmental observation, they begin to transform the inner landscape. As we have discussed, the practice of silence prepares the fertile soil of the mind, but it is the faculty of discernment that plants and cultivates the right seeds. It is here that the mind reveals its second, more active function. It is not only a mirror, but also a sword. The sword cuts, the sword separates, the sword defines precise boundaries, and the Hermeticist, wielding the keen sword of a well-trained mind, learns to cut through the thick fabric of illusions. They slice through the veils one by one, without haste but with unwavering precision, illusions about the self, illusions about the world, illusions about others, and even illusions about God. For it is only the one who has the courage to pierce all the veils who can finally behold the face of the real. Plato, a philosophical heir of Hermetic thought through the Pythagorean and Orphic traditions, taught that the soul's primary task is to remember, for all true knowledge is, in reality, a form of remembrance or anamnesis. The mind, in this profound process, must be disciplined not to accumulate ever more external information, but rather to diligently remove the psychic debris that obstructs this deep inner remembering. The ideal Hermetic mind is not a vast library of facts. It is a state of pristine clarity. This is in no way a rejection of reason. On the contrary, reason, when it has been purified in the crucible of silence and is guided by the light of intuition, becomes a powerful and indispensable ally of divine revelation. Hermes never created a division between the rational and the spiritual. He masterfully integrated them. However, reason must not be allowed to govern the soul. It must serve it. The field of depth psychology, particularly in the groundbreaking work of Carl Gustav Jung, who was himself deeply influenced by both Gnosticism and Hermetic alchemy, also illuminates this sacred path. Jung famously wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." The Hermetic mind does not flee from its own shadow. It courageously turns to study it, because it knows that the alchemical gold of higher consciousness is always hidden within the dark prima materia of the unconscious. In the Hermeticist's private mental laboratory, each thought that arises is analyzed with the precision of a chemist examining a reagent. What is its effect? Does it produce expansion or contraction? Does it lead to clarity or confusion? Does it generate love or fear? The Hermeticist learns not to identify with their thoughts. They learn to contemplate them from a detached center of awareness. And through this sustained contemplation, they transmute their thoughts into useful, symbolic tools for the great work. Practices such as Socratic self-questioning, the conscious use of archetypes, the interpretation of dream symbolism, and even modern psychological tools like journaling and active imagination can all serve the Hermeticist's purpose, provided they are used with pure intention and sharp, unwavering attention. The mind is like a crystal. It can either focus the light of consciousness into a coherent beam or scatter it in 1,000 different directions, depending on how it is angled. But there is a point beyond this. The mind is also a portal. When it has been sufficiently purified, silenced, and aligned with the intelligence of the heart, it begins to open to higher dimensions of reality, not as a form of fantasy, but as a direct, expanded perception. It is at this critical juncture that the mind becomes a perfected instrument of gnosis, direct, intuitive, and unquestionable knowledge. And this gnosis is not a theory to be debated. It is a living, breathing experience. The mind that can reflect reality with perfection and cut through illusion with precision becomes a willing instrument of the higher will. It no longer serves the fleeting desires of the ego. It serves the all. And in that exalted state, the mind ceases to be a perpetual battlefield. It becomes a fertile field of creation, a flawless mirror that reflects the divine with perfect clarity, a flaming sword that defends truth with unshakable firmness. The modern Hermeticist, then, does not seek to escape the mind. They purify it, they sharpen it, they align it, and when the time is right, they transcend it, leaving it behind like a masterful tool that has perfectly fulfilled its function. Will is the animating fire of the soul. It is the dynamic force that transforms abstract knowledge into a lived path, subtle intuition into decisive action, and pure intention into manifest destiny. In the Hermetic tradition, will is not to be confused with common desire. Desire is a passive wanting. True will is an active, inextinguishable flame. It is a flame that does not flicker out with the shifting winds of doubt or the drenching rains of worldly adversity. It is a flame that, once consciously kindled, seeks only one singular objective: to accomplish the work. And what precisely is the work? The work is the unique purpose for which you were placed in this world. It is not a choice made by the personality. It is a calling from the soul. It is not a career, a mission, or a project. It is your destiny. It is written that the will of a human being, when perfectly aligned with the mind of the All, can move heaven and earth. This is not a mere metaphor. It is a statement of a fundamental cosmic principle. The will is the precise point of intersection where the microcosm, the individual, and the macrocosm, the universe, meet. It is the incandescent ray of the divine spark, making its infiltration into the realm of matter. But this true will is not born fully formed. It must be forged and tempered in the alchemical furnace of life experience. It begins in an impure state, thoroughly mixed with the dross of personal desires, conditioned fears, worldly ambitions, and psychic noise. That is why every authentic Hermetic path demands, at a certain critical point, the purification of the will. And this purification is an ordeal by fire, a fire that burns away all hesitation, a fire that consumes the vanities of the ego, a fire that reduces every illusion to fine ash. In the Corpus Hermeticum, it is said, "You shall not attain the Most High while your will is divided." The Hermeticist understands this truth in their very bones. They know that every meaningful choice is also a profound renunciation. In the context of modern life, where 1,000 distractions fight for our attention like ravenous beasts, the simple act of keeping one's will aligned and focused is an act of superior magic. The contemporary world is designed to fragment the self. It demands endless productivity without a clear purpose, constant opinion without the prerequisite of silence, and perpetual movement without a coherent direction. The Hermeticist, however, learns to swim against this chaotic current. They do not live by the force of inertia. They live by the power of decision. True will is not something that is imposed upon the world through force. It is something that is listened for within. It does not scream for attention. It calls quietly from the depths, and it is within the sacred space of silence that this calling is finally revealed. Often, it first manifests as a subtle feeling of unease, a sense of misalignment with one's current life, a persistent, gnawing intuition that there is something more. And once this calling is embraced, it offers no external guarantees of success or comfort, only a quiet, unshakable inner certainty. This is the path. Not the easiest path, not the fastest path, but the true path. Aleister Crowley, a figure so often misunderstood yet deeply rooted in the Hermetic tradition, famously wrote, "Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law." The wilt, or will, he invokes, is not personal whim or selfish desire. It is the true will, that which springs from the innermost core of the soul and does not bend to societal pressures, fear, or passing trends. To find that will is to find your true self, the self that exists before any name, before any personal history. It is to touch the very creative intelligence that brought you into being and which pulses within you as a silent, powerful impulse to become. And how does this magnificent will manifest in the practicalities of daily life? It manifests through the work. For the Hermeticist, life is not a random collection of disconnected experiences. It is a conscious construction, a continuous, deliberate act of transmutation, where everything, absolutely everything, is utilized as raw material for the soul's evolution. Joyful encounters, profound pain, bitter failure, ecstatic moments of grace. Nothing is wasted. Everything serves the work. Each day, the practitioner consciously shapes their reality, like an alchemist tending the furnace of a secret laboratory. This is not done from an egoic obsession with control, but from a deep reverence for the act of creation itself. The Hermeticist's work may be silent and invisible to the outside world. It may not attract accolades or applause, but its effects are felt. Their very presence can alter the atmosphere of a room. Their carefully chosen words can reorganize energetic fields. Their conscious actions become living symbols. And the goal is not necessarily to achieve great, world-changing deeds. It is about achieving a state of perfect coherence. True will expresses itself even in the simplest gesture, in the way one listens to another, in the way one walks down the street, in the care and precision of one's words. For one who lives ritually, there are no small acts. The HeartMath Institute has scientifically demonstrated that clear intention, combined with coherence between the mind and emotions, measurably affects not only an individual's own physiology, but also the electromagnetic field that surrounds their body. The field of a focused will exists, and it organizes the probabilities of reality just as a powerful magnet organizes iron filings. In practice, this means that a conscious, aligned, will not only moves the individual forward, but it also begins to reorganize the world around them in harmonious ways. But this is only possible when there is alignment, when thought, feeling, word, and action all move in the same unified direction. This state of coherence is exceedingly rare in the world. That is why it is so incredibly powerful. When the will is finally purified, it ceases to be selfish and becomes an offering. It no longer seeks to conquer the world but to serve the divine plan. It no longer wishes to dominate life but to express the will of the all. And at that point, life itself becomes the work. Not metaphorically, but hermetically. It becomes the great work, the magnum opus, the sacred alchemical process that transforms the dense, leaden being into a being of light, the base metal into pure gold, the tiny divine spark into a radiant inner sun. The modern Hermeticist, then, is not one who knows many secrets, but one who has consecrated their entire life to a single, unwavering purpose, to live the truth, and their purified will is their sacred vehicle, their inner fire, and their flaming sword. They walk through the world with profound simplicity, but in their steps there is unmistakable power. They do not flee from matter, they redeem it. They do not deny the world, they consecrate it, because they know that the spirit only reveals its full glory when it is incarnated in totality. In the end, the true Hermeticist does not seek to escape from life. They seek to transfigure it. Thank you for joining us on this exploration. If this video was helpful, please like, share, and subscribe. And now, leave a comment below and tell us one thing you are grateful for today.